This happened a few months ago when I was trying to balance my demanding job as a software engineer with raising my two young daughters alone. Late nights were my time to catch up on work while they slept upstairs. I sat alone in the living room, the dim light from my laptop casting long shadows. I thought I was used to the quiet, but that night the silence felt heavy. I'd never stopped thinking about it. As I typed away, I heard something, the unmistakable sound of giggles. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but then I realized it was coming from down the hall. My heart raced. I crept out of my chair, peering down the hallway. The door to my daughter's room was closed, but I could still hear their laughter. I opened the door quietly, and confusion hit me hard. Both girls were tucked in their beds, sound asleep. Their toys were scattered across the floor, as if a play date had just ended. I had to rub my eyes, feeling like I was in some strange dream. The next night wasn't any better. I finished work late again, and settled into the same eerie silence. A chill passed through the living room, making me shiver. I blamed the draft. As I continued typing, whispers started to fill the air, faint and hard to make out, but close enough to make the hairs on my neck stand up. I forced myself to check every room, telling myself it was just the house settling. But no one was there. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Later that night, my daughters woke up crying. Both insisted they saw a shadow in the corner of their room. I tried to comfort them, telling them it was just their imagination. I'm not sure if I believed that myself. I stayed up longer than usual that night, listening for sounds. Just the stillness responded. On the third night, I sensed something was off. I walked into the living room, ready to work, and felt that draft again, sharper this time. It made me uneasy. Glancing down the hall, I saw a flicker of light coming from my daughter's room. Hesitantly I approached. My heart was pounding. When I reached their door, I heard giggles once more, mixed with something else, something darker. It didn't sound like my girls. I pushed the door open, and everything changed. The room was empty. Their beds were unmade, but laughter echoed in my ears. I froze, feeling an unwelcome presence wash over me. The whispers grew louder, and my breath quickened. Then, I heard a low voice that said, "Why didn't you stay?" I turned and saw only darkness. The giggling cut off sharply. I was overwhelmed with dread, and for the first time, I felt truly scared. I stood there shivering. Every instinct told me to run, to grab my daughters and leave the house. But I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by a fear I didn't understand. Then, after what felt like forever, the darkness swallowed me whole. When I finally snapped out of it, I was back in the living room, sitting at my laptop. The flickering light from the screen illuminated the room, but it felt somehow dimmer than before. I rubbed my eyes, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Had it been a nightmare? A trick of the mind from too much stress and too little sleep? I convinced myself I just needed to get back to work and forget about the strange occurrences. I took a deep breath and focused on my laptop. But even as I typed, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The air felt thick and heavy. My skin prickled as if something was crawling just beneath the surface. That's when I heard it again. Soft laughter, bubbling and childlike. It echoed off the walls, and I could almost picture it swirling around me. I shut my eyes tight and clenched my fists. Not again. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding once more, fearful of what I might find. I moved cautiously toward the hallway, but took a moment at their door. Was it just my imagination? What if it was happening again? With one last deep breath, I opened the door. The room was dark, only the faint glow of the moonlight could be seen streaming through the curtains. Both beds were empty, and I felt a wave of panic rise within me. But the laughter persisted. I couldn't see anything, yet the sound reverberated in my ears. I called out, "Girls?" My voice cracked, uncertainty bleeding in. The laughter abruptly stopped. In that silence, I noticed a toy on the floor, one of their dolls, a bright red dress catching the moonlight. It looked out of place, as if it had been moved. I rarely saw them play with it. My gut twisted. Checking once more for signs of life, I stepped further into the room. I reached for the doll. As my fingers brushed its fabric, something icy flitted past my ear. I spun around, heart racing, but found only the empty room and the shadows that danced along the walls. Feeling more precarious than ever, I stumbled back to the living room. I grabbed my phone to call a friend, maybe someone who could help me make sense of this madness. But the screen lit up with a missed call. It was my ex-wife. I hesitated, torn between relief and dread. Why now? Why hadn't she reached out before? I decided I'd listen to the voicemail, and as I did, the message struck me cold. You have to leave that house. Leave now. Don't stay. They're not alone there. Before I could react, I heard a crash from upstairs. Something heavy had just fallen. My heart dropped. What if it was my girls? I ran toward the stairs, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I had no idea what awaited me up there, but every instinct urged me to hurry, to check on my daughters. I reached the top, breathless. The hallway was shrouded in darkness. Then one of their bedroom doors creaked slightly open, as if inviting me in. I took a hesitant step forward, knowing that whatever lay beyond that threshold might reveal everything I feared. I stepped into the room, the air heavy with tension. The moonlight spilled across the floor, illuminating toys scattered like forgotten dreams. My eyes darted around, searching for movement or signs of life. My heart raced as silence stretched, and the crash played back in my mind. What had fallen? I took a cautious step deeper into the room. My gaze fell upon the closet door slightly ajar. It felt too still, almost unnatural. I paused, my hand hovering over the handle, the strange laughter echoing faintly in my memory. I forced myself to breathe steadily. Whatever was happening, I had to confront it. With a quick breath, I pulled the door open. The closet was dark and empty. Just clothes hanging lifelessly on their hangers. A wave of relief washed over me, but it quickly turned to dread. The laughter suddenly erupted again, echoing, wrapping around me like a cold breeze. I stumbled back, heart pounding louder than before. "Stop it!" I shouted, my voice shaky. "Where are you?" The laughter stopped, replaced by a soft whimpering sound from beneath the bed. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, but I forced myself to crouch down and peer into the darkness. "Girls?" My voice trembled. The whimpering was joined by whispering, like two childlike voices engaging in a hushed conversation. I strained to hear, but the words were muffled and distorted. Their shadows darted just out of sight, taunting me from the corners of my vision. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, morphing into a chilling chant, "Play with us." My breath hitched at the sound. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was frozen in place, horror rooting me to the spot. And then, like a slap, the realization hit me. It was just my daughters who were here. There was something else. Something that had been lying in wait. I crawled backward, trying to put distance between myself and the bed. But as I turned to stand up, I felt an icy breath caress my neck. That was it, I was done. I sprinted out of the room, adrenaline surging through me as I flew down the hallway, the laughter restarting behind me, now mixed with the sound of tiny footsteps closing in. I rushed to the stairs, nearly tripping on the last step. I had to get out. I bolted to the front door, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the lock. But just as I was about to pull it open, the door swung inward with a bang, a gust of wind sweeping through, extinguishing the last remnants of light in the house. Panicking, I looked back into the darkened living room. The flickering shadow of a figure stood there, just out of reach of the dim streetlight outside. I blinked, forcing my eyes to adjust, but it remained. A small shape, just like a child, grinning in the dark. "Mommy, come play." It squealed, laughter ringing through the air. I stumbled back, breath caught in my throat. In that moment, all my doubt evaporated. I wasn't imagining things. There was something in my house, and I was no longer alone. I could barely process what was happening. My hand shook as I locked eyes with the creature in the shadows. It looked almost like one of my daughters, but too distorted, too exaggerated in its features. I backed away slowly, trying desperately to keep the panic from consuming me. "Go away!" I shouted, my voice small against the walls. The laughter rang out again, echoing in the chilling silence. It felt like the walls themselves were laughing at my fear. I needed to think, but my mind was racing. I turned toward the hallway, struggling to find a way out. Desperate to escape this nightmare, I sprinted back toward the kitchen, hoping to find a place to hide, something to defend myself with. I grabbed a heavy frying pan from the countertop. It felt ridiculous holding it as a weapon, but it was better than nothing. The laughter faded, and the house fell eerily silent. I stood in the kitchen, heart pounding, every sense on high alert. I felt like a cornered animal. Then, movement caught my eye, something darting past the living room entrance, sloppy and swift. My breath caught. It was too dark to see clearly, but I knew that whatever was in my house was toying with me. "Show yourself," I yelled, hoping my voice would bring back the courage I needed. "This isn't funny." For a moment, nothing happened. Then I heard it, a soft voice, almost sweet, calling, "Mommy, where are you?" It sounded just like my youngest. My heart dropped. They were in the house. They had to be just playing games, right? "Charlotte? Emma?" I shouted, straining to hear a response. I needed to know they were okay. I inched towards the living room, frying pan clutched tightly in my hands, ready for whatever might jump out at me. As I stepped into the living room, I felt a bone-chilling draft passing through, and the lights flickered. I was taken by an overwhelming urge to scream, but I held it back. The room was empty. Toys lay scattered, the same ones I saw before, but they looked different. Old, dusty, like they hadn't been touched in years. That S when I saw it. A small handprint on the wall, smudged and dirty, as if a child had pressed against it and left a mark. My blood ran cold. "Okay, this isn't happening," I whispered to myself, the frying pan now feeling heavier than ever. "This has to be a dream." In the corner of the room, another giggle erupted, followed by a hushed conversation. I turned, ready to confront whatever ghostly playmates lingered in my home. But the living room erupted into chaos, lights flashing, and then plunging into darkness. "Mommy!" The voice was sharper this time, more urgent, sending an icy spike of fear through me. I could barely move in the sudden blackness. My heart raced as I turned toward the sound, but my other senses were overwhelmed. I heard footsteps running fast, then suddenly silence. Someone else in the house, I thought, panic gripping my chest once more. I wasn't alone. I took a cautious step back, every nerve in my body screaming for me to run. But before I could decide my next move, the whispers returned, all around me. "Play with us, Mommy." I froze, realization dawning. There was no escaping this. If I wanted to save my daughters, I had to face whatever was trying to pull me into the darkness. But how could I play when all I wanted was to survive? The darkness around me felt alive, pulsating with the whispers of unseen children. I clenched the frying pan tighter, sweat dripping from my brow. Every shadow seemed to dance, each flicker of light a taunting reminder of what I was up against. "Stop this!" I yelled, trying to summon strength. "Where are my girls?" My voice trembled, but I had to stay focused. I needed to find them. I flicked a nearby switch, praying the lights would return. They did, but only partially. Castigating flickers of yellow light illuminated the corners, leaving more of the room shrouded in shadow. Then I spotted something. A flash of movement near the hallway, the chilling outline of a figure. My heart raced. I steeled myself and dashed toward it, but as quickly as I spotted it, it vanished. One of them was playing a cruel game. Charlotte. Emma! I called again, desperation turning my throat raw. Please respond. Silence fell like a heavy blanket, and the cold seeped deeper into my bones. I turned toward the kitchen, thinking maybe they had gone that way. But the whispers started anew, echoing in rounds. Mommy, come play. With each step, unease gripped me tighter. I ducked into the kitchen, scanning for any signs of life. The plates were stacked precariously high, strange shadows seemed to warp around them. Then, without warning, the door slammed shut behind me. Let me out! I screamed, panic rising like bile. I rattled the doorknob, but it was locked tight. I pressed my ear against the cool wood. Nothing. Just silence. And then I heard it again, a distinct sound breaking the quiet. The soft, rhythmic thump of something. It was coming from inside the pantry. My mind raced. I moved toward the pantry door, the familiar scent of old food and despair drifting out when I cracked it open. I peeked inside, half expecting to find nothing but emptiness. But instead, I found toys. My daughter's toys. Piled on the floor, scattered carelessly. I bent down to grab a worn-out doll, a stuffed bunny that had once belonged to Charlotte. Why were these here? The whispering intensified, rising in volume. I dropped the doll, fear pooling in my stomach. And then, from deep within the pantry, I heard a giggle, the unmistakable sound of my youngest. Mommy, where are you? The sweetness of her voice twisted inside me like a knife. It was wrong. It echoed, layered over itself, as if a dozen children were trapped inside. And I knew they weren't alone in there. My heart sank. Back against the pantry door, I felt the cold seep into my skin. I had to make a choice. Leave the pantry and search the rest of the house, or face whatever lay in the dark corners behind the door. Just then, the lights flickered again, and I caught a glimpse of another figure, a small silhouette peeking from behind the kitchen island. My breath hitched. I wasn't alone anymore. Mommy, it called again, voice sweet and innocent, but there was a sinister edge that made my blood run cold. Don't move, I warned, raising the frying pan. But the figure stepped forward, revealing a face I recognized all too well. Mommy, play with us. My heart raced for the second time that night, but this time with terror. Because staring back at me was not my Emma or Charlotte. It was something otherworldly, twisting their features into a mockery of childhood. And as I backed away, panic rising, I stumbled over a chair. The laughter erupted again, ringing around me like a chorus. I knew then. I wasn't just dealing with shadows, they were far more sinister. I had a decision to make, but before I could act, the lights went out completely. I was plunged into a suffocating darkness, and I felt the figure draw closer. Playtime is forever, the voice whispered, and with that, I was swallowed by the night. I stood frozen, every instinct screaming at me to run. The darkness closed in like a tight fist, and I gripped the frying pan as if it were my only lifeline. I could hear the soft padding of footsteps getting closer, each sound sending jolts of fear through my body. Stop, I croaked into the void. Who are you? The laughter died down, replaced by a low, eerie hum. I couldn't tell if it was coming from the figure or resonating from the very walls around me. We just want to play, the voice chimed again, overlapping with more sinister giggles. I needed to gather my thoughts. Where were my girls? I had to believe they were safe somewhere. I took a cautious step back, still trapped in the kitchen. The pantry was still open, a portal into the unknown. I reasoned that if the shape was drawing closer, I might be able to use the pantry as a place to hide, a way to observe without being seen. I slipped inside and pressed myself against the back wall, heart pounding. There, in the dark, I could feel the weight of the kitchen air thickening. The sounds of playful whispers swirled around me, taunting, almost inviting. "Join us, Mommy. It's fun." They were wearing my daughter's faces, but it was all wrong, the wrong smiles, the wrong laughter. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing them away. When I opened them again, the pantry door creaked wider. Suddenly, the kitchen lights flickered on again, but only briefly. In that flash, I caught sight of something on the counter, a notebook. It was mine, the one I used to jot down all my thoughts about the girls, and whatever else filled my mind during that isolating early motherhood. I slid out of the pantry when I was sure the figure had momentarily moved away to see the light. The notebook lay open, pages fluttering as if stirred by an unseen hand. I stepped closer, the panic gripping me less tightly now in the face of curiosity. But as I reached for it, the room darkened again, deeper this time. The voices crescendoed, and I felt a rush of air as if someone had rushed past me. I gripped the frying pan harder, forcing myself to breathe slowly. "Get back!" I shouted, but my voice sounded distant, swallowed by the shadows. Unexpectedly, I heard another voice, a familiar one. "Mommy! Emma?" I breathed, but the chilling echo didn't match her tone. It felt distorted, somehow hollow. "Come and play." It was happening again. I took a trembling step back, scanning the corners of the room for that familiar silhouette. Just when I wasn't sure how much longer I could stand it, the lights flickered on one last time, illuminating the kitchen. In that moment, I saw them, the lingering shapes of my girls, but with the same distorted grins that taunted me before. The figure behind them melted into the shadows, watching, waiting. I was not facing mere shadows anymore. Then everything went dark. I felt it surge through me as a thick silence cut deep like a knife. And then, with ice in my veins, I realized I was no longer alone in the house. And they knew my name. I couldn't just stand there. The darkness pressed against me, squeezing the breath out of my lungs. "Stay calm," I whispered to myself, though my heart raced. I needed a plan, and more than that, I needed to protect my girls. I took a deep breath and fumbled my way back toward the pantry door. Perhaps hiding wasn't the answer. I could try to be brave. I stepped into the shadowy kitchen, squinting, moving closer to the counter, where the notebook still lay open. It was a tether to my past, and I needed its words now more than ever. But as I approached, I noticed something strange. The pages were not filed with my ordinary thoughts. They twisted into something else. Drawings. Distorted faces that looked eerily like the girls, drawn in a frenzy. My heart dropped as I recognized them, Emma and Lily, but the eyes were too wide, the smiles too broad. Then, a loud crash echoed from the living room, breaking my trance. I jumped back, frying pan raised. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice cracking. No answer, just silence filling the air like a weight I couldn't bear. That's when I remembered the door. I had to check the back door. I turned to the hallway, my grip tense on the pan as I slipped into the darkness once again. I could hear faint whispers, almost rhythmic, like chanting. Each step felt heavier than the last, and I nearly stumbled over the pile of toys strewn across the floor. "Emma!" I yelled, desperation clawing at my throat. "Lily." Nothing. Only the whispers grew louder, insistent. My heart raced, each beat echoing in my ears. I reached the back door and found it slightly ajar, just enough to let in a draft that sent chills down my spine. I nudged it open further, revealing the cold, moonlit yard beyond. Pale light spilled through the doorway, illuminating the garden. And that's when I saw them, two small figures standing just at the edge of the yard, cloaked in shadows. Their heads tilted in unison, eerily synced, as if they were marionettes controlled by an unseen puppeteer. "Mommy, come outside." The distorted voice of my daughter rang from one of the figures. I stumbled backward, panic igniting every nerve in my body. "No!" I shouted, shaking my head. "Stay where you are?" The figures didn't move, but an unsettling mirth danced in their eyes, a malevolence I couldn't shake. My thoughts raced, trying to make sense of it. This wasn't just a game. It felt like a trap, like something else was pulling the strings. Then I heard it again, the laughter. Not from them, but from deeper inside the house. It wrapped around me, chilling my blood. I turned back to the kitchen, heart pounding. The sudden realization crashed over me. Someone, or something, was playing with me, orchestrating the shadows. That's when I saw it, a shadow moving, a glimmer of eyes watching from the darkness, grinning until the very edges seemed to curl. I had to make a choice. Do I confront whatever waited in the house, or do I protect my children from something I could barely comprehend? The answer wouldn't come easy. I stood frozen at the threshold, wrestling with fear and urgency. Two small figures loomed in the yard, their voices echoing hauntingly in my mind. I had to act. I took a cautious step toward the kitchen, the sounds of laughter deepening, as if the house itself was alive with malice. I glanced back at the girls. Emma and Lily were still standing there, unmoving, eyes fixed on me with that creepy smile. My grip tightened on the frying pan. I felt a whirlwind of emotions. I needed to protect my girls. But what if they were in danger? I couldn't let whatever was in the house draw me away from them. I turned back toward the kitchen. The air inside felt heavy, thickened by unseen tension. Suddenly, a loud clatter came from the living room again. This time it sounded like something heavy had fallen. My heart quickened as I approached the door separating me from the unnerving laughter. I didn't want to leave the girls outside, but I felt a pull, as if the house was insisting I step in. I pushed through, peeking cautiously into the living room. The darkness seemed to whisper around me, a sinister invitation. I scanned the room, expecting to see someone, but found only shadows. Then, catching my breath, I noticed the coffee table. It was askew, like someone had shoved it violently. A sudden chill ran down my spine. I stepped into the room, my senses heightened. The laughter faded, leaving an eerie silence that pressed against my skin. I hesitated for just a moment, thinking of those drawings in the notebook. Had I been warned? What if it was all connected? With renewed determination, I ventured deeper into the house, searching for my girls. "Emma? Lily?" I called out, keeping my voice steady despite the tremor beneath. No reply. I started heading back toward where I had seen them in the yard, but as I stepped back into the hallway, I felt something brush against my arm. My breath hitched. I spun around, gripping the frying pan tighter. Nothing. Just a wisp of cold air. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Something darted across the floor. A shadow, quick and deliberate. I felt a surge of panic. It could be anything. "Show yourself," I shouted, fighting against the rising tide of fear. Silence encased me once again, and I strained to hear any sign of my daughters. My heart sank as I realized I had lost sight of them. A surge of adrenaline shot through me. I rushed toward the back door, but I froze. There they were. The girls stood at the threshold, their faces illuminated in the moonlight. But they were different, glassy-eyed too still. "Mommy, we're coming in," they said in perfect unison, their voices unnaturally harmonized, like some twisted version of a lullaby. My stomach nodded. "No! Stay back." But the shadow inside me churned, pushing me toward the truth I never wanted to face. I backed away, a deep sense of dread settling over me. That's when I saw the glimmer in the dark. A shape moved among the shadows, slowly emerging from the depths of the house. Someone was in here, and they weren't alone. My breath hitched again. What was coming next? I had to protect my daughters. But from what? The figure stepped out from the shadows, and panic surged through me. It was a woman, her long dark hair hanging in greasy strands, her face obscured by the dim light. I swallowed hard, heart thudding in my chest. "Who are you?" I demanded, clutching my frying pan with white-knuckled intensity. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned her gaze toward Emma and Lily, still standing at the door. My daughter's expressions hadn't changed. They remained eerily calm. Suddenly, the woman's eyes widened. "You shouldn't have come back," she said, her voice low and almost melodic, laced with an unsettling softness. "What do you mean?" I stepped backward, putting distance between myself and the unknown woman. "Get away from my children." The woman raised her hands, palms out. "I'm not here to hurt them. I can help. But you have to trust me." Trust? My instincts screamed at me to flee, but I couldn't leave the girls. They were bewildered, and something was off about them. I had to figure out what was happening. "Why are they like this?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What have you done to them?" The woman stepped closer, and I felt the air thicken, a palpable tension hanging in the space between us. "I didn't do anything. They were called. They felt the pull just like you." "Called? By what?" My mind raced with possibilities, and I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. "By this place." She gestured around the room, her finger tracing the air as if she could draw out the darkness itself. "It hungers for energy, emotion, joy, fear. It takes from those who enter its domain." I glanced back at the girls. Emma blinked, and I saw a flicker of recognition behind her eyes before it vanished again. "Mommy?" Lily's voice came out soft and childlike, but it felt wrong, like someone else was speaking through her. "Can we come in?" "No!" I shouted, heart racing. I turned back to the woman. "How can I help them?" "Only you can break the bond they've formed," she said, her eyes boring into mine, as if she could see the turmoil within. "But know this, you might lose them forever." "No!" I gasped, the full weight of her words crashing over me. What did that mean? I couldn't risk it. I wouldn't. The air in the room crackled, and I felt the shadows shift again, coiling around me. I could feel the house shifting, reacting to the mounting tension. A low whispering filled the space, like voices echoing through time. That S when the lights flickered and dimmed, casting the room into almost complete darkness. I could no longer see the woman clearly. My panic spiked. "Get away from them!" I yelled, stepping in front of the girls, ready to protect them. Then everything went dark. I stumbled, the weight of darkness pressing in from all sides. My pulse raced as I fought against the suffocating blackness, struggling to make sense of my surroundings. The echoes of laughter morphed into a cacophony of whispers, wrapping around me, squeezing out every rational thought. I felt trapped. Then came a flash, a momentary flicker from a nearby window, illuminating the outlines of my daughters standing lifelessly at the threshold. Their eyes glinted in the darkness, void of innocence. "Mommy, come join us!" they chorused, their voices now harmonized in a haunting melody. "No!" I screamed, desperation clawing at me. I took a step toward them, instinctively protective. There was no escaping the horror in their expressions, twisted into unsettling grins. Something had changed. Something had taken root inside them. "Look!" The woman's voice cut through the din, soft but insistent. "They're lost in the pull of the house. You have to break it." "Break what?" I asked, my voice trembling. Panic throbbed in my chest as the shadows seemed to dance closer, yearning for me to forget, to give in to the pull. The woman stepped forward, her presence like a candle midstorm, illuminating bits of truth through the haze. "The bond they share with the darkness. You have to choose, confront it, or lose them forever. Those words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. Every fiber of my being screamed to protect my daughters, but what did confronting it mean? But how? My voice implored, desperate for guidance. Fight the fear, remind them of who they are. Speak to them, she said, urgency lacing her words. The flicker of an idea sparked within me. Emma! Lily! I called, forcing my voice steady, though my heart thundered. It's me. Mommy. You have to hear me. The shadows twisted around me, turbulent, but I pressed on. Remember the stories I told you? The adventures we shared? I need you to hold on to those memories. Come back to me. With each word, a flicker of recognition broke through the murkiness in their gaze. The chorus of laughter faded slightly, replaced by a low whimper. The woman watched, her expression unreadable, part determination, part sorrow. Keep going, she urged, her eyes locked onto mine, as if our connection would guide my daughters back to the light. Remember the time we went to the park? I pressed on, desperation clawing at my throat. Do you remember playing with the balloons? The ice cream we shared? The figures at the door wavered, their smiles faltering. Mommy balloons? Emma's voice was quieter now, a hint of confusion slipping back in. Yeah, the big red one that nearly floated away. We laughed. You both chased it through the grass. I felt the tension begin to shift, hope threading through my fear. The woman stepped closer to me, her presence now firmly anchored amidst the chaos. You're almost there, she said quietly, as shadows swirled. Come back to me, my girls. You're so brave. I love you. I shouted, the weight of my heart behind each word. The room lit up again momentarily, illuminating the doorway, and there they were. My daughters were confused, blinking as if waking from a deep sleep. Relief surged through me. But then, a roar of laughter erupted from the shadows, chaotic and furious. The woman's voice turned urgent, cutting through the noise. You're drawing attention. You need to finish this now. Listen to me. I shouted, my heart pounding as I rushed toward them. I need you to fight, both of you. Remember who you are? Suddenly, the shadows lunged, reaching for the girls as I sprinted toward them. I closed the distance and clasped their hands, feeling the warmth of their small fingers in mine. A moment passed, a flicker of warmth amidst the darkness, grounding me. Together, I urged. On the count of 3, we fight this together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. We all shouted, we won't play anymore. The laughter turned frantic, a chaotic whirlwind of anger that enveloped us, but my daughters squeezed my hands tightly, their connection to me shimmering through the darkness. With every scream we shouted, the oppressive energy around us began to detangle, threads of darkness starting to peel away. In an explosion of anguish, the house seemed to seethe. Shadows recoiled and screamed. The air vibrated with despair, but together, we surged forward, light pushing back against the encroaching void. And then, just like that, the room erupted in a flash of brilliance. A wave of energy swept through the space as the shadows dissipated, retreating into nooks and crannies, shrieking as they lost their grasp. The room was silent. I gasped for breath, adrenaline fading, as I quickly turned to my daughters. They looked dazed, confusion mingling with relief washing over their faces. Mommy? Emma whispered, her voice trembling, now back to its authentic timbre. Yes, sweetheart, I'm here. You're safe, I barely managed to answer, emotions washing over me like a torrent. The woman stood nearby, her own smile tinged with sadness. You did it. But you must leave. This house has been losing its fight, but it is not done. It will find new prey. My heart dropped. What does that mean? It means you need to leave this place, she reiterated, her voice strong and certain. You've broken the hold, but it will never let go. You need to take your daughters far from here, make a new home. I nodded, understanding the weight of the truth. I held my daughters close, feeling the warmth of their presence. "Let us go," I urged, pushing through the tears threatening to spill. But as we stepped outside into the cool night air, a chill swept over me. Was it finally over? I glanced back at the house, standing there ominously, as if waiting, eager for its next chance to ensnare another unsuspecting family. The shadows danced again along the windows, beckoning. "Mommy?" My girls nudged at me, eyes wide and innocent, oblivious to the lingering threat. "It's okay, sweethearts," I reassured, heart racing. The memories of that night would linger with me, a heavy specter trailing behind, but we were free for now. And as I led them toward the car, I couldn't shake the feeling we had escaped one darkness, while unknowingly lingering on the edge of another. Sometimes I still think about that house, wonder if it waits, hungry for its next victim, or if those shadows still lurk, whispering the same twisted lullabies. I guess I'll never know.